Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. I think the NFL views the sports world differently. So we all know that big eats small. Right? It's just in business. Big eats small. Like at some point, Fox is like, we can't build to scale to compete with Disney and Netflix. We're going to sell a big chunk of our business off. By the way, they took Disney for a ride. They got about $80 billion for a movie business that wasn't worth anything. And the $20 billion for the regional sports network that was worth a nickel about a year later. But the NFL has now scheduled another Christmas Day game. So there was always sort of a gentleman's agreement in sports. You know, you get opening day in baseball, and the NBA gets Christmas Day, and then, you know, the NFL is going to dominate certain things in the fall. Now, for the record, I've always believed, and I've thought this forever, that the NBA would be much better served starting 2 days after the Monday after Thanksgiving, the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. Monday, Tuesday is football talk from the weekend. Then Wednesday's a dead day in that sports calendar. NBA starts a month later, plays into early July because it's wide open.
Yep.
And then, so I've always thought the NBA's got their schedule. They should just move it a month later on both ends, beginning and end. But it is interesting now, kind of the pit bull attack mantra of the NFL. I think they see weakness. I think they see Steph and LeBron getting older. And I think that marketing day on Christmas was a real thing. It was an introduction as we're all home to the NBA. They put the biggest games, the biggest stars, and it was sort of their free marketing day. And I think the NFL had, not that they were getting huge ratings, but they were the biggest regular season game. And I think the NFL sees weakness. I think they watched the NBA during BLM and COVID, lose some viewers for, maybe positioning, marketing on that. It stumble a little. Perhaps you can see some ratings erosion there. Sure. And then LeBron and Steph are getting older. The game's getting a little bit more European. And it's interesting. Like the gloves are off. It feels like to me the NFL has said, we're going to squeeze you. And I think,
go ahead.
And I do believe that's a tipping point. That Christmas Day mattered a lot to the NBA, and those NFL games put a blanket over it.
Well, so there's two angles to this. One is what it means for the NBA, and it's terrible for the NBA. The opening day in the NBA is fine, but it used to then have Christmas Day is a big day. That's going away. The All-Star game, now it's like, nobody gives a shit about that.
The joke.
And now the NBA, both professional and collegiate basketball at this point in this country seem to be moving towards, we really love your postseason. And the rest of it, take it or leave it.
Yep.
So I think it is bad for the NBA in that regard. I also think, and this is where we might disagree, long-term, I think this is a massive strategic error by the NFL. And here's why. I think one of the secrets to the NFL's success is all of us, and I don't mean media, just we are in a different spot because it's literally our job. But everyone that loves football has convinced all of their loved ones, spouses, children, whatever, who don't love football, that the games are unmissable. Like it is, I don't know about you. I think most of your listeners at this point, they don't even get shit from their significant others. When my team is playing a NFL game, they know I am out of commission. I am watching. It is mandatory. It is part of being a fan.
No anniversaries.
I'm not going to a wedding. Correct. We won't schedule our own events. We won't, you know what I mean? No one's going to ask me to take my kid to the birthday party. No. Okay. So here's why I think it's a mistake. It's the same reason I thought that putting on Christmas Eve, that Bills-Chargers game on an app was a mistake. because it's Christmas Eve and it's on an app and people are just going to miss it.
Right.
And the moment it starts being, and Christmas Day, they put a Raiders game at 1 p.m. Christmas. Those fans are on the West Coast. That's 10 a.m. That's Christmas morning. So there were a lot of Raider fans who just missed the game. Here's why it matters. Now, your significant other or your kid or whomever says, you missed the other. It was fine. You watched it later. You caught up. As soon as it becomes, if the inventory becomes so ubiquitous and you put it on days where people are going to miss, and Christmas people are going to miss some.
Thursday.
Right. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you don't have to watch every game. You thought you did, but you don't. And even if you still think you do, your wife or your significant other, it's like, you do not have to watch every game. I know it. Because we were at Aunt Margaret's house on Christmas Eve and you didn't watch and you were fine. So I think long term, I think it's a mistake. I'm the only person that thinks this. I understand the ratings are going to be massive. Yeah. But I think there has been I think all of us, especially as they've added a 17th game, like I whisper, I don't want my kids to hear it. I certainly don't want my wife to hear it. Like I cover the sport. I could probably miss a game or two and be okay. But they don't think that. They're like, no, it's daddy's watching football. Don't bother him, daddy's. I'm like, yes, it's worked. But all of a sudden, you put games on Christmas, they're going to be missed. Like now I watched the Chiefs. It was my team played at 1 p.m. on Christmas. And that's the other thing. That was also the worst. That was the Raiders game. Yeah. It's just a disaster. I mean, we didn't lose sense, by the way, Super Bowl champions. I didn't love it because here's the difference. NBA is watched passively.
Yes.
Even on Christmas, like even the Christmas Day games, it's in the background.
Right.
It's on. And then, it's close with 5 minutes left and sit down and watch. I don't know how to watch football passively. Yeah. I can't come in and out of the room and be like, that's just not how my brain works with football. So I don't, and it's on a Wednesday. I don't know. I don't love the Christmas Day thing. I like the rule changes the NFL did. I'm not just trying to bang on the league. I think the Christmas Day thing's a little greedy. I don't love it. And I think it's short-sighted.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I tend to, I don't know if this is selfish or not. I tend to look at the sports calendar and I see everything through the eyes of what does it do for the production of my show and my staff. So when they talked about 18 games, and that's going to happen, they'll add a second bye week. Well, the season will end. The staff will go dark for a week. Everybody gets a vacation. We'll come back. We'll be right into free agency in the final 20 games of the NBA season. So for me, I'm like,
oh, it's great.
I get rid of 2 dead weeks of sports talk. But, one of the things, like, for instance, college basketball is a prime example. I can absolutely be fascinated with something for 3 weeks and nothing more. And I think it's the sports brain. Like college basketball, this next weekend, Gonzaga, Purdue, will not miss it. These big games this weekend, will not miss it. I don't think the quality of college basketball is great, but I like the Mardi Gras feel, the annual party.
But listen,
feel.
It's cliche. And it's the only time anyone ever uses this specific word is with college sports, but it's the right word. The pageantry of it is something.
Yes.
Like the students and the band and all of it, it overcomes the fact that I'm like, I'm pretty sure this team shoots 36% on open shots like that. I'm like, I am pretty like, this is not good.
No,
but it is entertaining. But you're right. I feel totally fine parachuting in.
Yes.
Like I don't pretend and act like I'm a college basketball expert. I'm not. And I came into the tournament. I'm like, I used to live in Houston. I like the coach. I'll root for them.
Yeah.
And other than that, I'll root for underdogs because it's fun. I'll root against UConn because it'll cause Wilds pain. And then that'll just be it. Like, and then I'm into it. And the women's game has stars that I'm into, but I don't need to have a year-long investment in
That's right.
I just don't.
Well, and the other thing is I had a 4-team parlay in college basketball last week, my first one of the year. And people are like, you don't really follow the sport. And I'm like, it's math. Just look at certain numbers in the bat. Like I just made another 4-teamer today. Billy Beane didn't watch the A's play. Jerry West would not watch all the Lakers play. You start watching too much of anything, you get so viscerally, emotionally distraught and connected, you make bad bets. I've said this about the NFL. The red zone is perfect. The red zone gives me the great moments. I don't overthink football. Then I can go look at stuff when I make my blazing 5 picks. I can just look at numbers that are important, third down numbers that I worry about. How do you close? How do you start? How much do you run? The weather. And it's like, I don't need, to me, there is no proof that watching every Oregon game makes me a better Oregon better. It's like saying, the more you drive, the better driver you are. I could argue the more I drive, the more fatigued I am, the more numb I am, and the less alert I am.
So I think that is on a general gambling perspective. I think that if you had a team, the generic you, if anyone had a team that they watched and followed like it were their favorite team, but that they did not give a damn about, that I actually think would give them real insight on it.
So
but go ahead.
This is interesting. So Lem Banker, the late Lem Banker, was a gambler in Las Vegas, and I started gambling on sports in Las Vegas. And Lem Banker said, it's not a volume game. He goes, find a team or a college conference, and within that conference, find 3 or 4 teams, and just watch them and bet them.
So that's what I was getting to. Like, I think I know. I do not think. This is going to sound arrogant. I don't mean it to. I do not think Brett Veach, the GM of the Chiefs, knows more about the Chiefs roster than I do. And that is only because I think I am maximum. I don't think it's possible to know more. I think I've reached maximum knowledge level of that roster. But I am not a good Chiefs gambler because I'm so emotionally invested in it, and it leads to high highs, low low. Like it's not that you always overrate your favorite team. Sometimes you underrate them. So you're like, they suck. What the hell? You know what I mean? But I've watched everything and I consume everything. So if you did that with a team you don't care about, just, you know what I mean? From a pure knowledge perspective, I do think you would be like, oh, nobody's talking about it, but our left guard who wasn't that good, is at 50% and his backup's terrible. And we got Jeffrey Simmons coming up. That in and of itself is worth 1.5 points. You know what I mean? I do think you would have that. So I think that there is, in theory, the more you watch, the more knowledgeable you are. In practice, the thing you watch the most is the thing that you are going to care about the most.
Right.
And then the emotion is going to pervert your logic on it.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't want to know about all my wife's intimate relationships.
You said this last week. You
I
must
don't
have
want
had an interesting therapy session.
I don't want to know about what my kids are doing. It doesn't make me a better parent or a husband, all that knowledge. So my take has always been, I like to watch things like a judge watches a case without emotion. I can go look up the data. My wife always says this. She says, I'm always watching a game for an angle. Like when I went to the Bulls Celtics, the first thing I noticed, the first 4 minutes of the game, the Celtics didn't start Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, or Drew Holiday. And the first thing that was obvious is Billy Donovan told his team clearly, they're not as athletic. Push the ball. Horford's on the floor, old guy. So Chicago came out going 1,000 miles an hour getting some easy buckets. And then later in the game, you could watch Boston. They've played together, older players did a much better job. You could tell that Boston's coach had told them, don't ISO. We've only got Tatum. They're taking him out in some pass, move the ball. We're a smarter team than they are. Move the ball. Boston at the end of the game was like, it was a symphonic. It was beautiful ball movement. So it's like I was watching the game for angles, and I think you do the same thing. I don't need to watch entire games. I can go, like I watch UConn twice this year, and I'm like, oh, nobody's going to beat this team in college basketball. Defense, scoring, coaching, they're just too good. They're too long. And then I watch Carolina 3 games, and I'm like, That's the only team that could give UConn trouble. And I probably watched 12 college games this year. I watched Gonzaga and I said, they're good. They're not good enough to win the title. I watched the series of teams. So, and again, it's not like I do chalk mostly on the college tournament, and I'm not Alan Boston, one of these legendary gamblers in college basketball. But the truth of the matter is, the more you do anything, the more emotional you get, and that's not always make you a better husband, a better parent, a better boss.
In theory, if you could acquire the expertise without any of the I'll use an analogy. Then I have a basketball take for you. You made me think of it when you were talking the NBA.
Okay.
If you're running a business and you are there every single day,
yeah,
and you have employees,
yes,
so you actually, so this is, you are the expert at it, but it is also very human to then develop relationships.
Yes,
and so what is best for the business versus I really like this person. Oh, this, those things all intermix in your brain. If you were, I think it's probably why, and I'm totally talking out of my ass here because I know nothing about running a business, and I just thought of this in the second, but I think I'm right. It's probably why people bring in outside consultants. Yes. They're like, hey, you don't know this guy went through a divorce. You don't know this is my godparent. You don't know anything. Come look at this place and tell me what works and what doesn't. Give me a cold, calculated reading of it, because I am, as the saying goes, too close to it. Right? Like that is how human beings work, in that they can get too close to things. They can know so much. I guess that's where the phrase, you can't see the forest for the trees, comes from. So I do think there's something to it.